Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. At this time, I'll reconvene the La Quinta City Council meeting of July 15, 2014. At this time, I'd ask that you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we go into our first item on the agenda, I'd like to introduce our new city attorney, Bill Erkey, from Rattan and Tucker. Kathy has stepped down, and she's going to be alternate, right?
That's correct. She's the assistant.
I'd like to welcome Bill to the city of La Quinta.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. If you have anything that you'd like to discuss and that is on the agenda, I'd ask that you please fill out a request to speak form like this. Anyone wishing to speak on an item which is not on the agenda may do so at this time. I do have one request. Bill, do you want to come on up? Bettencourt?
Oh, no, I finished, Mr. Mayor. I just turned that in for the closed session.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
For earlier.
Oh, no. Oh, this was earlier?
Yes, sir. I just turned it in.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, Bill.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
All right. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to confirmation of agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions by staff?
No, Mr. Mayor. No
And by
changes.
council members.
I'd like to pull consent 16 to make it business 2.
So business. Okay.
And I'd like to discuss consent and pull consent number 7 for a separate vote, please.
7.
Okay.
Just a separate vote? Or did you want?
Discussion and vote, yeah, it doesn't need to be business.
Oh,
And I would like to pull number 5 for a discussion only in that. So with that, I'll ask for, no, we don't need it. Move on to announcements, presentations, and written communications. We have none this evening. So I'll move on to the consent calendar. Entertain a motion.
So move consent calendar as greatly amended.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Linda, you want to take number 7?
Sure. Just in looking at the request for David Park's absence from IAB, I inquired whether or not it was the first request because the number 8 actually indicated that it was the first request by the other 2 commissioners. And it appears that this is the 4th absence this fiscal year from David Park. And knowing that our commissions have a 3 absence rule, apparently I learned during my session with Tim that once we excuse the absence, then it wipes the slate clean and it gets to start over.
yeah,
However, this is the 4th time this has occurred.
so we don't want to approve it.
I think probably we should follow up with David. You know, if he has a problem, then that we need a consensus and a full board meeting. You know, when we have our meetings and that. So I think we need to follow up with him to see if this is going to be a continued problem. Then we should ask for his resignation so we can bring somebody else in.
Well, and I guess for me, it was also about process and understanding that
Right.
they're supposed to follow the request for absence approval, but not knowing that then that doesn't count towards one of their 3.
Great.
And so given this is a 4th, yes, we do need to communicate, but I would also like to make a motion to not approve
Not approve.
the absence
Second.
as requested.
Okay. Because you made a
yes.
motion.
Mhm.
And I second.
And Terry seconded. Please vote. Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, my question on number 5, and that has to do with the signature development at PGA West, and that, and Tim or Les, maybe you know, I looked at the plans that we're approving, And one of the things that they were directed to do was provide access through the facilities from the private course to the public course without having to go up the street and into the entranceway where it's a dangerous situation where we could be involved with the accidents and that. But I didn't see it on the plans, Les. Have they made the roadway available to the golf carts going from the private to the resort courses?
Yes, Mayor, there are two options. This was an item that, when they updated the signature project that was brought forward through that effort, they abandoned the original plan for a separate trail, if you will, on the north side of the property for two other options. One, the ability for golf cart activity to go through their main gate and out to the east gate near the clubhouse. Now that would be one where it would be for residents not only of Signature, but as you know, that project's being annexed into the Fairways Association, so it would basically be for PGOS residents to be able to utilize that because there is a transponder need for the east gate. The other option that the Master Association approved at that time was the utilization of PGA Boulevard with some restriping to widen out the golf cart lanes to be a little bit wider than what currently exists out there. So those two items were what was brought forward when we were going through the final review and for the site development permit application and specific plan update for the signature project. So there are those two opportunities that will exist when the project is completed.
Okay, the thing is, it doesn't show on the plans that we're looking at tonight.
Right, there's the
And I
map.
just want to make sure that there is something set aside, and I don't believe going up the street is even though you widen that lane, because what you're going to do is you're not going to widen the street, you're going to narrow down the lanes to widen out a golf cart pathway, if that's what you want to call it. I think my concern is that's the long way around and it's the dangerous way around. What we need to do is be able to have access that goes, when you cross the street right there at the private clubhouse, as you go through, like it does now, ties right into the golf cart path on the 18th hole of the stadium course, and then you go right into the golf course and that. It's simple, and that's the way it should be. So hopefully that they're not looking at some way of closing that off, which will provide a more dangerous situation for the residents that live at PGA West.
And again, the access, it won't be straight across at that intersection. There's an oversized sidewalk, if you will, pathway that has, I believe, been put in now, that runs down from that stop, that new stop that was established here a year or so ago.
There's a stoplight there, makes you stop.
You then head south on PGA Boulevard to which will be the future new entrance into the Signature. So golf carts will be able to go in through that access point through the community on their pathway or their roadway, and then it will come out near the...
Get it off PGA West Boulevard.
Correct, right.
All
If you take that pathway, you won't even have to go onto PGA Boulevard except to cross
Okay, I
it.
just want to make sure that that's part of it, that they're eliminating it all of a sudden and it's not there.
Correct. That's the one option, and again, the other option is that the Master Association approved the use of PGA Boulevard.
I don't think that's
too.
acceptable, but, okay.
Great.
Thanks, Les, that answers my question.
Mr. Mayor, would this be an opportunity perhaps for our attorney, Bill, to explain the change of ruling with FPPC in regards to proximity of residence? Since this particular item, normally you and Christie would have a conflict, and one that's coming up on public hearing, I would normally have a conflict.
Can you do that, Bill?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The Fair Political Practices Commission recently changed the rules to clarify that the so-called 500-foot rule, where if an elected person owns property within 500 feet, there would ordinarily be a presumption of being disqualified. The FPPC had issued several advice letters saying that 500-foot radius was to be measured from the outer boundaries of a homeowners association-owned property if you owned a residence that was subject to a homeowners association. The new rule has clarified that that is not the point from which to measure that 500 feet. It is actually from your actual residence, and the homeowners association-owned property is not the correct point. So that then has resolved a couple of the some of the potential conflicts that were cited that are no longer conflicts.
Thanks, Bill. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 5.
So moved. Second.
Moved to second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to our business session. Our first item is first reading to introduce an ordinance amending section 2.60.020 of the La Quinta Municipal Code relating to the Conflict of Interest Code and approve the California Fair Political Practice Commission's 2014 local agency biennial notice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members. This is something we do every 2 years, we bring to you, and we are required to adopt it by ordinance and put it in our municipal code. And the purpose is to list all the officials, the public officials, who may have some influence over any financial decision the city makes. So that includes, of course, all elected officials, top city staff folks, middle management, consultants, anybody who might have any influence. They don't have to be direct decision makers, but if they have a strong influence over any city decision, financial decision, they are required to be listed in this code and to file annually what's called a Form 700. It discloses economic interest that we all have. So every 2 years we're required to do this, so we are doing it again this year, 2014, even years. And the only changes we are going to make are those changes that have occurred because of staffing changes. So new positions that have been added over the past 2 years that would have influence over any city decisions will be added. City positions that have been eliminated will be taken off the list. And then we have a few changes in titles. So it's really a housekeeping issue this year. The full ordinance is available in the back of the room and, of course, online. And we are here today for first reading and introduction, so I will read the title to that ordinance. It is called an ordinance of the City Council of the City of La Quinta, California, amending Section 2.60.020 of the La Quinta Municipal Code relating to the city's Conflict of Interest Code. I'm available to answer questions should you have any.
Questions of staff? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval to take up ordinance number 519 by title and number only and wait further reading.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, if you would also move to introduce the ordinance, and then thirdly, move to approve and accept the biennial notice.
Move to introduce at first reading ordinance number 519, amending section 2.60.020 of the La Quinta Municipal Code relating to the city's Conflict of Interest Code.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And then we'll move to approve and accept the California Fair Political Practices Commission's 2014 local agency biennial notice.
Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
That clears it up. Okay. We'll move on to a business item, which is the consent calendar, item number 15.
16.
Christie?
16. It's number 16.
Oh, okay.
I just had a couple of questions. The amount that we're spending comes from which bond issue?
That comes from the 2002 bond proceeds.
2002, okay. And the Phase 2, which is what we're talking about, construction golf restoration, it's budgeted for $1,852,000. We awarded a contract for $1,580,000.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So then it talks, then the $140,000 has been set aside for pre-purchase of surf. How about turf? Surf.
Well, sir.
So, are we at this point supposed to include the 140 in the actual cost of the 1.5?
No, the
Wasn't that an
140,
alternative?
140 would be in addition to that.
I know that, but it says here on our report that we can, or not.
The pre-purchase of the turf was authorized at the June 17th meeting, so that was already approved, but is part of the construction cost for Phase 2.
Okay, but it says here alternatives. On page 242,
Yeah.
it says that we may choose to award the base bid area plus additive alternative 1, which is the turf, for a total cost of 1.7.
Actually, additive alternate 1 is not the turf.
It's not the turf.
It's reconstructing the.
The sand.
The sand bunker at the 10th.
Okay.
And that's additional 120.
That's additional 120?
Yes.
Okay, so are we supposed to make that decision with this?
If
as an
you,
alternative?
yeah, if you determine that you want to actually do those improvements also, then you can also award the additive.
How do we feel about that?
I think you should.
One fell swoop, yes.
Yep.
Well, I have a problem spending $120,000 out of the bond money that we would be using towards the entire site development plan, which is the only thing we have to offer up these days, for a bunker that if we're spending $3,000 a year would take us 40 years to reach $120,000 to just expense and replace the sand as it blows. I guess being that we're already looking at close to $1 million to redo the golf course to keep the Arnold Palmer name, this is just eating up into whatever bond money we have available to help make the rest of the property happen under our projected plans.
If I could, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
This is also a matter of the quality of the course itself. I mean, the Arnold Palmer course is a very high-quality course. I mean, we've done that from day one. So the change of the sand bunker isn't just a matter of the sand in itself, but also the quality of the course and the change of that hole from that standpoint. So I would hate to shortchange the quality of the course for this $120,000.
Why does it cost $120,000? What are we doing to it, other than moving dirt?
Well, it's a combination of reducing the size of the large bunker adjacent to the green, as well as reshaping the area, the throat, if you will, of the fairway into the golf hole itself. So there's some irrigation work involved in that. There's some grading out in front of the green, plus the reduction, plus the bunkering work. So it's all of that combined.
Okay. Well, I think we should do it while we're doing the rest of this. Otherwise, we'll be putting it off and then trying to find money to do it later.
Right.
Linda, I had the same questions. I had a long conversation with Tim on this issue too, because we were talking about, initially we had the real fine sand in there, and every time the wind blew, of course, the sand went to India.
We went to heavy sand.
But we put the new heavy sand in, and I said, well, are we losing sand? And he says, only on that one hole. Apparently, the way it's configured, the wind picks it up, and even though it is a heavier sand, it blows it out and that. And when the Palmer Design people got together and they said, you know, this is gonna be a continual problem, we need to fix it, the problem and that. And also, it will make the hole easier to play than what it is right now, because there is no way for the amateur golfer to be able to get to the green without going either in the water or in the waste bunker or in the bunker in front and that. So I think beneficial to the golfing community, it's beneficial to spend this. I questioned it too. I think, you know, to spend that kind of money, but I think long-term it will be beneficial to the golfers and to the viability of play within the golf course.
Success.
So, and I hate to spend it,
Yeah.
and I'm with you. But
How do you play
I think
10?
it's,
How do you play 10, Mr. Mayor? How do you play on number 10?
with great difficulty sometimes.
And-
No, sometimes I play well.
We have a new commissioner in the audience. Mark Johnson, how are you on number 10? Scratch golfer.
Well, yeah, he's
You hit the green?
Can I drive the green? No.
no.
I hit a shot about 200 yards, and probably a sand.
I guess I'm looking at, I understand that's like, this is our choice if we're going to do everything, now's the time to do it. You know, I just have a problem spending $120,000 to fix one hole, knowing that we've got to invest close to $1 million to retain the Palmer name with their designs, and obviously that might have been a design flaw in the beginning, and with the work that is being done going forward to make this work, you'd think that maybe they'd lower the price on what they're charging because it was an error in design in the first place if it seems to be a continual problem. But I would much rather expense the sand on an annual basis and have it retain its difficult play component. We have been a PGA, we've been a Humana Challenge, we've been, you know, already marked as a stellar course throughout, and I don't remember reading in any of the articles except for that number 10 sand blow by the bunker. I can't support that expense.
Linda, I would question that they would admit to making a mistake.
Well, of course, it's still a lot of money
I
when we're
mean,
spending.
they're quality designers and that, and I doubt if they would admit that. I don't think they made a mistake. I think that they were designing a course for professionals and that, and number 2 handicappers and that, not bogey handicappers like me.
Well, I mean, I think it's something, like I mentioned, from a quality standpoint on Silver Rock, and we have quite a bit online for Silver Rock for the future of the city. And I would hate to shortchange this as, you know, but I don't want to go into the canal underground issue, but I think this is a proper thing to do to preserve the quality of the course as we did with the changes necessary because of the canal. And again, from the Palmer Group, it's a good investment for us that will come back substantially in the future once we get Silver Rock developed. And it only gets better. And I mean, Randy could tell us, or Moore Landmark could tell us, a lot of these golf courses make changes as time goes on to improve the course. And I see this as just changes necessary as they go along to improve the course. And,
Well,
Forced changes
yes,
in
maybe
this
forced.
case.
we also have an option of looking at the alternative bid. That's the lower bid, correct, Tim? Is that?
No, this is the low bid that you're looking
The
at.
1.7.
The 1.7 includes the base bid from O&J, the
Okay.
low bid contractor, plus his price for the bunker work on 10.
And when we originally planned for bond money, it was about 1.7, 1.5, 1.7.
Total was 1.707,
Right.
as I recall.
So we're going to be exceeding that projection.
Okay.
Unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution to approve the expenditure for former redevelopment agency bond proceeds for the Silver Rock Golf Course Restoration Improvement Project with finding pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 33445A, and award a contract to O&J Golf Construction, Inc. in the amount of $1,580,663 for Phase 2 of Silver Rock Golf Course Restoration Improvements, including the award of the additive alternate 1 for the cost of $1,700,548.9
It's not the
Wait, wait.
total cost of, not
Yeah.
additive cost of that much.
for a total cost of the 1.7.
Second.
Moved in second, please vote.
Not happy.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. We have no study session this evening, so we'll move on to reports and informational items. Linda, you want to start us off?
Sure, the only thing I've got to report on is CVAG Energy Environmental, and basically nothing substantial on the agenda, but there is a trip planned to Downey on July 30th, Southern California Gas Company, making a trip to the Energy Resource Center, and it's an all-day trip for those that want to participate that are CVAG related, and check out what they're doing in terms of energy resources, and I may be going to that and reporting back.
Okay.
That's about it. Thank you.
All right. Christie?
Yes, I had a Mountains Conservancy meeting, and we approved purchase of a couple of different sites to further our endeavor to protect our beautiful mountains. We also had a review of our executive director, who's been here for a year now, and that went swimmingly, very well. He's doing a great job. And that pretty much was it. We talked about goals that we have and how we're going to raise funds. I think we have $13 million left now, and the 2009 water bond issue is supposed to be on the November ballot, but we aren't on it. So it doesn't matter, to us whether it passes or not. But we're hopeful there'll be another water bond issue, and we can tag onto that for sustainability, because the way we have been purchasing land, we probably have about 3 years left. And that's it. And the money will be gone. So.
Water will be gone.
Yes, yeah, that too. And then Animal Campus, I talked to about this woman who wanted to leave the Animal Campus X number of dollars, and it's really amazing what she had planned to do. Well, that never went through. I wasn't overly surprised. Sometimes when things appear to be too good to be true.
They are?
Yeah. So that didn't happen. We had just had discussions about basically the spay and neuter clinics that are going on in the East Valley more than anywhere else. And there are quite a few, especially in Indio, Coachella, Mecca. And I really praise these people for the work that they put in. Yeah, it is difficult. It's emotional and difficult, and they're charging very little. The vets are, veterinarians are donating their time, so it's just, and sometimes with everything that's going on in the world, I can go to a meeting like that and I can say, wow, yeah, there really are good people here. So that was basically that. And then I have 2 meetings this week, 2 tomorrow, actually.
Good. All right. Terry?
Actually, I haven't had that many this month so far. I did report to you folks on the potential for legislation out of Sacramento, 2372, which would be a Proposition 13 change as far as change in ownership of commercial property. And that's been an issue that's been around for a very, very long time. The commercial property has not been reassessed every time it changes hands, because there's been a way that the business community has been able to avoid that. And every time the issue has come up, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but the reason I am is because there is a candidate out there running for office in the fall that is not presenting the position on this legislation correctly. The candidate is actually saying that this particular piece of legislation will affect residential homes, and it does not. So it's not very wise for that person to be doing this, and I want to make sure that our folks know, and they can go to a website anywhere with the state. They can bring up this piece of legislation, learn it, read it, learn it, understand it, make your own decision, because maybe you may have a sense that you don't want to impose that kind of an increase in taxes on the business community. On the other hand, for all of these many years, one of our revenue sources has been property tax, as small as it is, which would have been a lot larger if the commercial property was being reassessed the same as residential. So you need to make up your own mind on that, and don't be kind of clouded by rhetoric that the legislation will affect your home, because it won't. But again, it's just so that you're aware that that is some kind of a campaign position that a candidate is taking out there. I did bring this up at a league division meeting last night in Murrieta, and it just, I think generally speaking, it is worth talking about. It's worth having your whole community be aware that Proposition 13 may appear on a ballot, and it's not a bad thing for homeowners. So don't fear that part, and then the part that it is, decide whether or not you want to see them taxed or not. And then I'm leaving tomorrow for a board meeting. That'll be Thursday and Friday, and technically it'll be my last board meeting, so. That's it, that's all I have.
That's it? Okay. Lee?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was at the Imperial Irrigation ECAC board meeting last week, and part of the agenda, they talked about the new public benefit program budget for 2015. That budget is $14 million. Of that $14 million, about $6 million of that is monies for folks that can't afford their utility bill, low-income folks, or need help from a medical standpoint. So there's a budget of about $6 million to help pay the utility costs for some homeowners, and then there's about another $8 million of incentive-type programs, whether it be for solar programs or air conditioning programs, different types of programs to reduce your utility cost and reduce your utility amounts. So that was a big discussion we had, went on quite a bit, but yeah, $14 million in the public benefit program and $6 million for low-income folks to help pay for their utility costs, power costs, and then another $8 million for other programs. And that was approved, so it went on to the main board, and they'll have that approved later this month or in August. That's all I have.
Is that a first come, first serve?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. I
And
mean, it's a pretty big program. They looked at the total amount for 2014, and of that $14 million, about 60% of that is being used in Imperial County, and about 40% of that is used up here in Coachella Valley. So, though we have about 60% of the utility, we're using about 40% of the benefit program. But otherwise, there's a number of new solar projects coming online down along the border, and we did ask, Imperial Irrigation District has been promoting the aspect of the geothermal industry to help solve the issues we have at Salton Sea. So we've asked for that report, to bring that to the ECAC board so we can have a better understanding of what they're looking, from. And at that point, I'll bring it here to council.
Okay.
So we'll have that information.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay. My meetings are all later on this month, so I have nothing to report. We'll move on to department reports. Tim, filling in for the city manager.
I have no report for the city manager.
Bill, anything from the city attorney?
Nothing further to report, thank you.
Okay. City clerk?
Mr. Mayor, only that council members are asked to mark their calendar. There is tentatively a special meeting planned for July 29th, Tuesday, July 29th. I don't yet have the time, but we'll be posting that as soon as we get a time. and I'll be sending it out to all of you.
Thanks, Susan. Department reports. Any of our department heads? Anything? Nothing?
I do have
Police department, fire department?
I do have a comment on the marketing quarterly report, and just wanted to congratulate the team on the website recognition, on being top website for the Coachella Valley, and the high-ranking score, and where that improved from once we came.
I agree with that. I was looking at the website just over the weekend. It's a beautiful website. It looks great. I think you guys are doing a great job with that website. Really coming along well.
Congratulations.
Okay.
One other thing, if I could, and one thing I didn't mention in the IID board, a new program was brought to the board regarding education programs to bring young students into the utility business with IID, and through high school education programs as well as into junior college program. And one of the board members mentioned what we have going on here at the city of La Quinta, and I just want to commend the Public Works Department on that program with those kids and the internship program for those kids. I think it's a great program, and the more we can get these kids involved in that and have something to look forward to from an education standpoint and an idea where to go, I think that's a great idea. So hopefully the IID program gets some feet. We approved $50,000 just to get this program started through the end of this year, and hopefully fund it for next year in the future with IID. But I look forward to our program continuing. Thanks, Tim.
Okay. Thanks, Lee. Okay, all right, we'll move on to mayor and council members' items. Anybody?
No, but before we do, I did notice that there was a report here, even though you said you didn't have one from the city manager, there is one from Public Works.
There is.
There is.
Well, you have the opportunity.
I-
When have you become bashful?
No, that's why I was specific, but if there's questions on Public Works, be happy to answer.
No, I didn't have any questions. I thought you wanted to point out something specifically. No?
Tim, I will say this, with the new paving that's going on within the community, I had a couple of people talk to me about it, and they said, hey, that roadway is really smooth now. So it looks like they're doing right. The only thing I saw, they had it on the news the other night, and the striping down the center was not totally in line. It kind of bounced back and forth. But other than that, it was fine.
Well, they're actually driving on the base course, so when we actually do the final lift of paving, they'll have a really smooth ride, and the striping will be permanent at that point.
They like it now.
Okay, great.
At least these two drivers that talked to me about it.
Great.
But they were happy about it, and I said, well, we're spending a lot of money doing it, but we want to keep it and maintain the streets the way they should be.
Sure.
Well, I can tell you, Mr. Mayor, that if you'd have gotten the email that I got from somebody who had to put up with the noise,
Oh, well, there's
you will
always
find
that.
out that there are some out there that aren't happy that we are taking care of our streets.
Oh.
That's a shame.
Yes.
I
it
just,
is.
when we talked to mayor and council members' items, I gave to each one of the council members a graph, a chart defining property taxes, and that I talked to Frank Spevacek, our city manager, about 2 months ago, and I said, I'd sure like to know what the various property tax that each of us send to Riverside County, how much of that, because it's broken down in the tax bill, comes back to the city from things that the property owner is paying back to the city for doing city work and that. And I gave it to our council members here, and it was very interesting in the fact that when you look at it, and every one of our 9 cities are on here, that the city of La Quinta's yearly tax base that comes back to the city, or that we charge to the property owner, is $45.58. The most is our neighbor next door, and it's over $2,000 in that. So it's interesting when you look at the various cities about what they charge the property owner, and that the city of La Quinta is the lowest in the whole Coachella Valley. And I think that's something to be proud of, and that we have kept our tax rate to our citizens down as much as we have now and hopefully in the future. That's all I had. And that, Christie, yeah.
Brian Nestandi gave a seminar, I guess it's been a couple Fridays ago, with respect to, maybe it wasn't a seminar, but, well, we'll call it a seminar, with respect to the need for vocational education in our valley.
Yes.
And as I guess everyone knows, that's one of my hot spots, hot topics. And it was evidently very well received, and I hope he will continue to push the point because he has clout, and we definitely do need technical vocational schools in the valley.
That
That's
was
where
a
the
great
jobs are.
program, and
Yeah.
I was there at that, and it was good to hear the amount of programs that are out there. You don't realize how many are out there, but Riverside County has a number of them, and then the school districts are starting to promote their own as well.
With the
And-
academies.
Right, exactly, with the
Right.
academies. And so it was a great presentation, and there's a lot more than you realize going on there, so it was good to hear. You did a good job.
And the
there.
academies are great, and they do a lot of that through CVEP, but what do they do after they're out of high school? That's my whole thing, is that if we're going to we're trying to keep them in the valley and keep workers in the valley, then we need the schools here for them. But I liked his emphasis on that. It was good.
It's good.
Okay, unless there's anything else, at this time recess the city council meeting, and we will adjourn at 6 p.m. for the public hearings in that. So we'll move on to other issues, and we'll deal with the other agencies. So at this time, I'll call to order the special meeting of the successor agency to the La Quinta Redevelopment Agency for Tuesday, July 15, 2014. Let it be known that all agency members are present. At this time, if there's any public comment from the audience, you can speak now. Seeing none, I'll move on to confirmation of the agenda. Any changes by staff?
No changes by staff.
By agency members?
No.
Okay, we'll move on to consent calendar.
Move consent calendar.
Do I hear a second? Second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. There are no other issues to be addressed, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Housing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, I will call the regular meeting of the Housing Authority to order, please. And we will note for the record that all agency members are present, and at this time, we'll have a verbal announcement on AB 23.
Board members of the La Quinta Housing Authority are entitled to receive a $50 stipend as set by Section 34274 of the Health and Safety Code, not to exceed 4 meetings per month, to be paid to members in attendance at every convened Housing Authority meeting.
Thank you. There is no closed session, public comment. I have no request for anyone to speak, but if you changed your mind out there, let me know now. Seeing none, we'll move on to confirmation of agenda. Any changes by anyone?
No changes.
Thank you. Next, announcements, presentations, communications, there are none. Consent calendar.
Move the consent calendar.
We
Second.
have a motion and a second. Please vote.
No.
Councilmember Evans, yours didn't take. Your vote didn't register.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm still on another item.
Oh.
Motion passes. Thank you. Business session, study session, reports and information, department reports, chair and board members, public hearings, none. With that,
Move adjournment.
we have a
Second.
motion and a second. Please vote.
I'm sorry. Before we adjourn, I'm looking at the resolution we passed on the consent calendar for Silver Rock. in the successor agency. Should we close out housing and go back? The only question I had is, it doesn't include the additive that we approved in the prior, so we approved a different dollar amount. So we should have added the motion to include the additive bunker.
So we'll go ahead and close.
Let's
the
close
At this
the-
time,
do
let
the
me
house-
reconvene the housing agency, or not the housing
Why don't we-
agency.
we can
the
finish-
Successor agency.
Mr. Mayor, Chairperson Henderson, we should probably finish the adjournment
Yes,
of the
yes.
Housing Authority first, and then we can reconvene successor
Okay,
agency.
with that, we do have a motion and a second on the floor for adjournment. Thank you, please vote.
Figure everyone's going to get up and leave.
Reconvene.
Okay.
Thank you, that motion.
Okay.
At this time,
Am I
I'll
wrong?
reconvene the successor agency, and
Wait a minute, they're still discussing this down here.
Is there any discussion on that item? Or city
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, the discussion is when pursuant to the provisions that apply to both the successor agency and the city, whether or not the successor agency also needs to officially approve the total amount of those bond proceeds that was approved by the city for the contract. And the only official action that the successor agency has taken with the prior vote, and we can reopen that if necessary, was just to approve the use of those proceeds for the total amount pursuant to Health and Safety Code, Section 33445. The successor agency is not entering into the contract like the city is, and that was the subsequent part that was discussed when the city took the action. So I think even with the action that has already been
Just
taken,
the approval
you've covered
of
what the
consent calendar.
successor agency needed to. But if you want to cover all bases, you can certainly reopen it and do
So
that.
it's almost flipped then. The successor should have agreed to the proceeds of the bonds as successor, and then as council, we would have agreed to the amount being spent since it's in the budget, but we agreed to the amount being spent before we agreed to release the bonds,
Well,
sort of?
it's all, yeah, it's all done in the same meeting, so it's really no harm, no foul, but
Okay.
that is point taken.
so we don't need to take any more action.
I don't think so, because because what was required to be approved was just the 33445 findings, and those proceeds
Now do include
now do include that amount.
120. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no,
Sorry for the disruption.
absolutely. No, absolutely.
Okay.
Just wasn't part of that discussion.
I'm going to need to ask for adjournment of the agency, because we reconvened it.
Motion to adjourn again.
Motion second, please vote.
Wanted to add a few minutes to our time.
Motion passes
We didn't have
unanimously.
anything to do anyway.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
You know, I guess we've posted the fact that we're going to have a public hearing at 6 o'clock, so
Yes,
That's
we
it.
can't
we have to wait until 6 o'clock.
That's it.
I'd like to be able to do this through, but
Sorry.
by law, we can't do it, so at this point,
No,
we're adjourned.
well, and I'd just like to comment on some of the other reports that we got from the police and the fire. They were very thorough this time and very, very interesting and good reports, along with Public Works. And you folks do put a lot of time and effort in your reports, so thank you.
Brett let him go off for about an hour.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. At this time, I'll reconvene the La Quinta City Council meeting for July 15, 2014. First item on the agenda is our public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak on an item which is not on the agenda, which is on the agenda, I'd ask that you please fill out a request to speak form. It's the orange form in the back of the room, and give it to our city clerk. At this time, anybody wishing to speak on an item which is not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none, we'll move on to the second item on the public hearing, and that is the public hearing for two issues that we're going to be dealing with this evening. I've been requested to move number 2 to number 1 and vice versa, and that, and unless there's a problem with council, we'll move forward. And the first item on the public hearing is adopt a resolution updating the city's user and regulatory fees. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you is a resolution updating the city's user and regulatory fees. These fees include an update to building, planning, public works, and administrative fees. Just a reminder, as far as revenue, we're talking about 6% of the revenues as depicted for fiscal year 13-14. We thought it would be helpful to provide a little historical context. As you may recall, roughly in March of 2013, the staff at your direction embarked on a full cost of service study updating all of our fees from 1996. And as part of that full cost of service study, the council updated the entire fee schedule, and during the public hearing, the staff and the city council was admonished by both the Desert Valley Builders Association and the Building Industry Association to not wait another 16 years to revisit the fees again. They asked us to provide updates to the fee schedules on a more regular basis. So tonight, this evening, is the first update of that effort. And the vast majority of the items before you have to do with adjustments that were called for in March 2013 based on consumer price index increases. The consumer price index over the past year went up 1.42%. The other categories of fees that staff adjusted or is proposing to adjust fall into 3 other categories. There's one category of fees that staff's proposing remain unchanged. There's a category of new fees, and these fall into fees that were missed from the old study or fees for which services are being performed for which there is no associated cost, things of that nature. And then there's another category of fees that are modified by an amount that's not the CPI increase, and the tenor of those types of fee modifications are to adjust them to match the level of effort. So in many cases, those fees went down. In some cases, they went up, but the idea is to match the level of staff effort to the fee that's being charged for that service. There was quite a bit of outreach that was done for this effort. Staff, in concert with our consulting principal, Terry Madsen from ClearSource, we met with the Building Industry Association. We also met with Desert Valley Builders Association. We spoke with Southern California Gas, and we did provide notice in the Desert Sun. All of the feedback that we received from the BIA and DVBA is reflected in the fee schedule and the resolution that's before you this evening. The staff's recommendation is to open the public hearing, and unless otherwise persuaded, to adopt the resolution that's attached in your packet. That resolution would update the fees to be effective on September 15th, 2014. With that, staff stands by for any questions. And then we also have in the audience Terry Madsen with ClearSource Consulting. He is the same consultant that helped us prepare the comprehensive study in 2013.
Okay, thank you. Questions of staff? One question. How do these new fees that we're proposing, how does that compare with the other cities in the valley? Are we down low? Are we up high? Or are we right in the middle?
Terry, could I ask you to take that one?
I didn't want it to be complicated, I just wanted to know where we stood.
The answer's quick. Based on what we found when we did the full cost of service study last year, La Quinta fell in the middle of the road. So it depended on the category of fee, but when we...
Yeah, but if you balanced it out, averaged it out, we would be right about in the middle.
That's correct.
Good.
For the fees we studied, that's correct.
Okay, that answers my question. Okay.
I have one question.
Okay,
I
Linda.
noticed that we're adding a credit card service fee to recover the transaction costs. My understanding is we haven't utilized credit card services for these transactions in the past, so that's new, and our goal is to pass along the cost of our fees to them.
That's correct. That is proposed to be purely a transaction pass-through. It costs the city exactly 2.2% to, that we pay our vendor, and we're proposing to recover those if a developer or person that does, customer of the city, wants to use a credit card to transact business. Of course, they can use cash or a check or some other form, a debit card. But if they choose to use credit, we're hoping that we can recoup those costs.
Most businesses do.
And that applies just for the building side of things, because you have the ability to use credit cards now for park and rec classes and things like that.
This fee schedule is appropriate for all city fees. So once this credit card service fee is adopted, it would be up to the individual departments to adjust things, but it could be used to recoup transactional costs on any type of credit cards.
Okay. If there's no other questions, then this is a public hearing, and I will, at this time, open up the public hearing meeting. And anything more to be said? Okay. I do have a request to speak. Gretchen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Gretchen Gutierrez. I'm the CEO for the Desert Valley Builders Association. Of course, most of you up there know me. We are here tonight in support of the recommendation from staff as far as the annual fee adjustment, with one just little tiny caveat that we continue to look at this on an annual basis. So our industry is, of course, continuing to recover. There is activity going on in your city. We were happy to see that. The permits are being pulled and there is activity going on. But we, of course, know that it's kind of tenuous still right at this point in time. So we would recommend that next year we go through this exercise again and we look at it as to whether or not next year's appropriate increase would be applicable, or whether or not we should hold off on it. But aside from that, for tonight, we are recommending, yes, that you adopt it with the implementation to start on September the 15th. And just a sidebar note, everybody, unfortunately, is having to look at that credit card issue right at the moment. It was an issue that staff brought to us and asked us how we felt about it. We're dealing with it in our particular industry and association right at the moment. Unfortunately, the credit card companies are charging an excessive amount of money in fees with not a lot of regulation. So it is a pass-through for you here at the city. So we support that as well. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I want to amend my previous answer. When I look at the way the resolution is crafted, this resolution applies only to the city's user and regulatory fees, and the specific recreational fees were not a subject of our comprehensive fee study. So only those fees that were subject of the comprehensive fee rate study that have credit cards associated with it is where this fee applies to. The council would have to take a separate action if they wanted to have that fee recovery system apply to rec fees or other fees. Okay. So I wanted to correct that while
that clarifies the issue.
I appreciate that, because that was, I can see soccer museum get shot, parks and that.
Okay. Thank you. Unless there's anybody else that wants to speak on the item? All right, I'll close the public hearing and the matters before the council.
Well, if there's no comments, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
So with that, I will make a motion to adopt the resolution updating the city's user and regulatory fees.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor, please vote. Motion passes unanimous.
With the caveat that we do this every year.
Yes.
That's right.
Bring it back next year. Huh? Okay. All right, we'll move on to then the number one item, which is number two. And that is to adopt resolutions to approve specific plan 2006-081, Amendment 1, and Site Development Permit 2013-937 for Canyon Ridge, a 74 single-family subdivision on 28.3 acres located on the west side of Washington Street, north of Avenue 48. Staff report, please.
Your Honor, Counsel, you may recall this property. It's been before you about 7 years ago. And as you see on the vicinity map here, the property is at 48th and Washington. It's the large vacant property with the dune that I believe everybody is familiar with. That's immediately south of the St. Francis of Assisi Church and north of Laguna de la Paz. The property has a bit of history. It was at one point in time the former La Quinta Arts Foundation site. At that time, there was preliminary grading that occurred in preparation for parking as well as event activities on that site. The foundation relocated and sold the property, and in 2006 there was a single-family residential project that went through the entitlement review process. A map was approved, specific plan, and site development permit at that time. The map is still active and is now currently going through the plan check review process. The new proposal that's before you for your consideration this evening is very similar in design to the original development. The general orientation of the streets, the lots, et cetera, are very much in line with that 2006 approval, including the number of units. There is a specific plan amendment addressing some minor changes to product design. There were some guest suites identified with all of the units. That's now being removed, and some other miscellaneous minor changes. And the site development permit is identifying the construction of the 74 single-family units on this property. The architectural style for the units is, again, very similar to what was actually approved before, with a combination of both Spanish and Mediterranean themes. There are two different single-story product types being proposed. There's the hacienda units, which are a little bit larger lot, about 10,000 square feet in size, and they basically flank the west and south borders of the property. And then the interior area are the bungalow units on about 6,300 square foot lots. Building heights are up to 22 feet, and there are some recreational amenities associated with the project. There's about a half-acre park centrally located in the property with some turf, some desert landscaping, and there's also quite a pathway of trails throughout the project and paseos as well. The main access is off of Washington, but there's also a secondary access that utilizes connection with the St. Francis of Assisi property and ultimately connecting out to Washington Street, aligning with Lake La Quinta Drive. And that is proposed to be a signalized intersection in the future, and there will also be a connection to the St. Francis of Assisi parking lot. So there'll be the ability for the church to utilize that new access and that signalized intersection in the future. This here represents the site plan, and as you can see, there is the main entrance off of Washington Street, and if I can show you here, the hacienda units are all along the western, these western lots here, and then the remainder of the hacienda units are in this area. There's 24 hacienda units, and then all of the interior units here, there's 49 bungalow units, and several of those are served by a shared driveway, so it's a kind of a U-shaped design with those 4 units all utilizing that shared driveway. This slide gives you a general perspective, taken from a vantage point very close to, I guess, Fig Restaurant, if you will, looking to the southwest. So gives you a general idea of what you would see that built environment look like. To give you an idea of the architectural design, this represents the hacienda units and some of the elevations proposed there, utilization of stucco, stone, brick, and clay tile roofs. And the bungalow units, again, similar materials being used for those units. And with this, you get an idea of some of the features. There is the half-acre park in the center of the site. There are the paseos in these areas that allow for pedestrian access. And then throughout the retention areas along Washington, there's also trails that will be established in those areas. This gives you a general perspective of the north access coming out of the project, venturing out to Washington and Lake La Quinta Drive. This is not to scale, but there will be a access point connecting up to the St. Francis parking lot in this area. This matter came before the Architectural Landscape Review Committee on May 21st. They recommended approval with conditions recommended involving providing dog park amenities within the half-acre park, as well as tiering the west retaining wall, and I'll discuss that further with you in just a moment. And then on June 10th, this matter was before the Planning Commission, and they have made a recommendation of approval for your consideration this evening. So with that, I would like to very quickly, as we conclude, bring up the west retaining wall. I've provided a memorandum to you this evening to help clarify a condition that the Architectural Landscape Review Committee first brought up, and that is there are areas along the western lots where the retaining wall can vary in height up to, I believe, around 18 to 20 feet in some areas. There was concern over a large, massive wall being in the rear yards of the hacienda units. So as we went through that process, the recommendation was to limit that mass, if you will, by providing a tiered wall system. So what's been recommended or conditioned for your consideration this evening is to create a tiered wall system where each of the individual sections of wall would not exceed 8 feet in height. And if the wall needed to go taller than that, they would have to step back 6 feet before they could go taller, and that would allow for some planting shelves to help break up the aesthetic of that mass, if you will, of the wall. That has been discussed with the applicant, and he may want to comment on that, but it's our understanding that they're in support of that condition as proposed. We didn't change that necessarily this evening, other than to clarify it further. There were some concerns that we had last minute as to if we're really emphasizing what I just expressed to you. So again, that's for your consideration to consider new language to modify conditions 3A and 55. With that, the applicant is in the audience, as some others that may want to address you tonight, and I'll conclude my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thanks, Les. Questions of staff? Lee?
Thank you very much. One question regarding the entrance, the main entrance. What is the stacking on the main entrance?
It is about 200 feet in distance from curb to the actual gate.
And I don't know what that means in cars.
In cars, that is...
20 cars.
Is it 20 cars?
Cars, 20 feet.
It's 20 foot, 20 feet per car, correct?
Correct. 10
So 10 cars.
10 cars. Okay. Okay.
Just for relevance, our minimum is three car
Right.
stacking.
Right. Just didn't want it backing out onto Washington with that traffic. Okay, that's all I have for now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Terry?
Les, for some reason, I feel like I'm in a time warp. And it goes back to the days, if you will, of when something like this would come forward, and first thing we'd start talking about is amenity for children on the project. And I'm very pleased to hear that they're going to take care of the dogs. But I'm not sure that I see much here that there is a little recreation area there. And I'm assuming, again, when you look at this, it looks like if there are going to be any swimming pools, that everybody's going to have their own. What kind of discussions did they have at the Planning Commission regarding that? I did not see anything in the minutes.
Yeah, there wasn't any discussion with regards to younger age group amenities, recreational type amenities at the Planning Commission meeting. I know at the staff level, we haven't talked about that, but we did talk about pools. And the hacienda units provided a large enough yard to accommodate pools, but yes, the other bungalow units really are going to be quite tight to be able to accommodate outdoor pools. But we didn't really elaborate too much on younger age amenities being incorporated into their half-acre park. They may be able to elaborate upon what they're expecting and for a demographic for these units.
Yeah,
I know that originally with the former developer with Lang, they had a demographic they weren't anticipating there being much of a demand for a younger age, younger age amenities.
I think that had to do with the cost of the product too. Yeah, and what they were anticipated being there. No, and I just am kind of taken back because it's very boring when you look at it with straight streets. And I'm not seeing any amenities. Now I'm hearing that, that the interior product is going to be difficult for any swimming pools to be in there. In fact, probably not have any. So, the only thing that's coming out on top here is dogs, or I'm sorry, animals, the animal park. And I'm just surprised, that's all, and a little bit disappointed. But maybe it's something I can take up with the developer. Oh, that'll do.
Okay, Linda?
Yeah, it's not a meandering design by any means. Talk to me a little bit about the current egress from the church onto Washington in regards to right now as people exit the church, they get into that left turn lane and cross 3 lanes of traffic, and it's quite dangerous actually. And so I know the Lake La Quinta Drive, I like that idea of the signal going back. I see the closed off cul-de-sac U-turn. Talk to me about that traffic flow and what impact that will have and what the church's feedback has been.
Well, certainly the one item will, with providing another means of access from the existing parking lot south to this drive out to a signalized intersection will be an improvement to the church. We have identified a condition that represents a cul-de-sac being established for that existing frontage road, but it does also provide language to where there could be a different egress access, not just a cul-de-sac, and that's something that we will be discussing and venturing through as we continue on with this through the final mapping process. But one of the main issues or main points as we were, this dates back even to the former developer, was to provide a better means of access that benefits not only this development, but it benefits the church as well. There is a representative or a couple representatives from the church that may be able to expand upon that, but our hope is that this does create a far better ingress and egress environment for church patrons. Right now, as you know, everybody is ingressing through Avenue 47 at that signal and coming down the frontage road. When you egress, you have 2 options, but ingress is one option. This will provide both 2 ingress and egress options, and I think dramatically improve not only general circulation, but safety for patrons of the church.
So for the actual residents, they'll either enter up Lake La Quinta Drive going west into a transponder gated entity?
Yes.
On the top of the screen there?
Yes.
And then they also have a midway between that entrance and 48th?
Yes.
Correct? And is that also then a transponder?
Yes. There is I think a small structure, but it's not intended to be a manned, at least as I understand it, not intended to be a manned structure,
Okay.
but it'll be a transponder activated.
So the circulation then for residents will either be one of those two, while the church can still do 47th, and then their big loop will be into the Lake La Quinta Drive, up and above or down in front.
That is correct.
Actually, only up and above. There won't be a down in front with the cul-de-sac.
Yes, the idea is to establish a cul-de-sac, but again, that is being explored as we venture forward as to if it gets completely shut off as a cul-de-sac or if there's some other way to provide a safe means of egress out and not interfere with the intersection. So that is something that, that we're exploring.
And then the massive wall is a little bit of a concern, and I know it talked about, cascading vines and bushes and shrubs. What's the expected number of years before it actually makes an impact, so the visibility of a massive wall diminishes? We start little plants small around here, and it takes a long time for them to grow.
The wall will be most noticeable before the homes are constructed. I mean, there's going to be a time when that infrastructure has to be put in, but once the homes are constructed, there will be minimal direct views of the wall. The plantings obviously would be for the benefit of the residents versus the territorial side of it. So certainly it's going to take a period of time for that to grow and mature, but then the buyer is going to see, they're going to see it as they're visiting that home, so they'll know obviously what
the intent is.
Yes.
So I'm just concerned about that Lake La Quinta Drive and what complaints we might get from residents every mass time of the circulation of cars going by their backyards.
Well,
Just based on the density of the property.
I just remember the comments that we had when we put the other traffic signal in there from the folks that lived to the,
Rancho La Quinta?
no, to the north of this project. And they were screaming bloody
47?
murder about that. And it turned out to be the best thing in the world when that traffic signal went in, they were all delighted. And I think that'll happen here too.
Point Happy area?
Yeah.
Excuse
Point
me,
Happy,
Trader Joe's?
Thinking back in my memory, when we were dealing with this, we talked about a signal there.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it, because it had to, it's a matter of safety.
Yeah.
We planned that,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, this
originally.
signal is
Yeah,
going in.
It's
Oh, yeah,
got
this-
it,
no, that's-
it's
this
my
is good.
question.
Right.
Will that go in at the same time, or is the developer of the project responsible to put the signals in?
The developer is responsible. It has to be activated by occupancy of the 15th home, I believe. So, I mean, they'll be constructing, but once there's occupancy of that 15th home, the signal has to be
Then the signal
functional.
has to go in, yeah.
Yes.
It's a matter of safety.
That was like on the CIP for 2018 or 19 anyway, at one point in time, if I recall.
It might have been in the last CIP.
I don't have any other questions.
Christie?
Yes. The slope that comes down off I assume all this building is in with our requirements? In other words, they're not building up on the slope?
Right, the homes it's basically the dune that exists there now, and if you see the property now, it's already been partially graded. The former developer was in the process of doing all of the grading for the site, the mass grading for the site. So all of the units, the homes will be at a very similar level of height. They will not be built up. It'll be pulling back the dune and then establishing that retaining wall, and they'll be at the lower level. It does slowly taper up, the project does, from Washington back, but it's not a significant tiering at all. So basically what you see out there now is very close to what we'd anticipate going forward with regards to the grading of the property.
Okay. My only other comment about this is that it doesn't have, it lacks oomph. It looks crowded and bunchy, and there are, again, straight streets. It just doesn't look exciting. Thank you.
Boring was the word I used.
No, it just does. It doesn't have any. Then the other thing to go along with that is a real lack of amenities. I think it should at least have, since you can't put pools in the bungalow area, it needs a pool. needs maybe a small community center or something. Just my opinion, but I think it's very bland, very vanilla. That's all.
That's it. Where all the blow sand is some of that going to remain between the mountain and the wall?
Yes,
and who owns that property?
there is a different owner as you go further to the west. So about 2/3 of that dune is a separate owner. And I believe it has affiliation back to the developer that originally bought the property from the Arts Foundation, Fox Homes.
Fox, yeah,
Yes,
Jim Fox.
and I
right.
believe that property is still held by Mr. Fox. So, but it's also protected land, it's within the conservation area, and so that's partly why you see that curve on this map is representing that property line, and like I said, about 2/3 or so of that dune, all that upper dune is protected outside of the footprint of this development.
Do you think there'll be any problems with that property when the wind blows and that sand goes over into these people's backyards, and if they have pools and that, is there going to be a problem? Or how do you mitigate this problem, the potential problem, let's put it that way?
But we've talked with the developer, they're fully aware of, we've expressed concern, not necessarily with the dune moving, but the fact that there's sand there for a reason. And even if the dune were stabilized, there's still likely going to be sand coming up over that mountain and settling in that area. So
Yeah, that's what I was concerned with. I just don't want them coming back and saying, why did you allow this to occur? Because we're having problems.
And that is, it really is dependent upon what happens, up the valley, if you will, because that's the result of that dune is what's happened further to the west, northwest, or what is happening, and that material gets up over and crests that little hillside, and it settles down in that area. So I would assume that obviously this is a collection that's been occurring for a long time, and there's been a lot of development that has occurred. So it certainly is less. There's probably less of an impact today than there was even 20 or 30 years ago, but nevertheless, we've all seen it. That area. Not just this property, the church sees it, Laguna de La Paz, that whole area, and on occasion during our wind events gets hit pretty hard.
Okay. Number two, the property to the south, and that one of the issues that I remember dealing with was the property owners that was to the south, and they're concerned about their views and how close it was to their property lines, et cetera. Have we had meetings with those property owners to mitigate and resolve any questions or problems they may have?
We have not, city staff has not met with Laguna de La Paz residents. We certainly have been available to answer questions. I do know that the applicant has met with representatives from that development, and he may be able to elaborate upon what's transpired during his exchange with them. The plan, which in that area I believe is very similar to the former Lang plan, so that was approved by council, and I believe back then was acceptable by the Laguna de La Paz residents at that time. So there may be the ability for, again, the applicant to emphasize, and I think there also may be a couple of residents from Laguna de La Paz that might have some comments for you.
Well, we should address their issues if they do have some.
We have not heard of any to date.
Okay. In front, right on Washington, the retention basin that's in there, and that, are they going to redo that, or is this, they're going to leave what's in there? Because I know there's trees, and they put all that gravel down at the base of it. Is this going to be changed or totally taken out and replanted and replaced?
Yeah, I don't believe that the trees are intended to remain. It doesn't fit with the planting schedule per se, as I understand it. But yeah, they'll have to be, the entire site has to be cleaned up, and some grading and massaging, if you will have to occur. But yeah, that whole area, there's a berm that goes in
Yeah.
as well along Washington with a wall, and so there will definitely be some fine grading activity that's going to have to occur, including those 2 retention areas.
Yeah, I have to go along with what Christie had said and Terry had said. I think we dealt with this issue with the Fox homes and that was the amenities for children, because you've got some nice homes. I like many of the floor plans that are on there. I thought that was done very well, and that showed a lot of indoor-outdoor living concepts to the floor plans in that. But I would also assume that there will be families that live up there, and when you have a compound like this, you need something for them, and I think we need to address that with the developer, and that. But was this brought up in your meetings with the developer?
Well, from the standpoint of, again, younger age groups and amenities within the park and whatnot, no, we didn't get into any great length of discussion with them, namely because this really doesn't vary much from what was previously approved. So we took the position at the staff level that since they're bringing back basically a very similar project to what was previously approved by council, we didn't get into that type of discussion with them. We had some very, I think some very, very early preliminary discussions with regards to the pools and the lots and whatnot, but that was about the extent of it. So, again, we do have a representative from, from the developer here, and he may be able to elaborate more on their plans and what possible, he's hearing what you're saying, so there may be something he can respond to you with regards to your concerns.
Okay. All right. That's all I had right now.
Mr. Mayor, if I...
Yeah.
Some more questions?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. In regard to the interior streets, is there any parking on the interior streets?
Yes, there is parking available on the interior streets.
How wide are those streets?
They vary in width.
Not including the multi-use, I mean, I would imagine the multi-use driveway, there's no parking on those driveways. I mean, because you've got 4 units using one driveway, so to speak.
Yeah, in the proximity of the bungalow units, the fronting streets actually have a slight notch to them. So the areas where the paseos, so where these areas are here, there's a slight notching that occurs, but all of the rest of the area, like in here and here, is all open for parking. So wherever there isn't the driveways or the notching for the paseo crossings, that's all available for vehicles to park. The same occurs up in this area too. So there is the ability for all of that to be utilized for on-street parking.
Okay. And then you mentioned some of this is still held by the Fox properties. How much is still held by them?
Well, this is independent of Fox. So,
I understand.
Yeah, the Fox ownership is basically the upper dune and the mountain. So it's to the west of this property.
So that's still available to the west of this property?
Correct. It's in the conservation boundary, so it's
Not buildable.
Non-buildable.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the slope.
Okay, all right, that's, the last question on this, up on the Hacienda area on the top, lots 12, 14, 15, and 16, I mean, that wall is going to be pretty much in their backyard, versus the other lots have that area behind them that give them some separation there with that dust. Why not those lots?
At that location, in this area here, the wall is not very high. The dune tapers from the northwest to the southeast as it comes off the hill. So in this area, it's not at grade but close to it. It's as you start heading to the north that the wall increases in height. So in this area here, there isn't going to be a very necessarily a real tall wall in that spot.
How do you determine where a short wall versus tall wall should be?
Well, it's based on trying to make the adjustment from the dune to the grade of the lot. So whatever that difference is.
So the grade exchange on that.
Right. That's what's going to decide how tall of a wall they need, be it be it up in this area, you're getting at the really high location for the wall. It starts tapering down a little bit over here, if I remember correctly. So this is kind of the peak point, and then it starts tapering as you go south, and then pretty much dissipates to.
Okay, so any of the flying sand in that on those windy days, there's no setback, so to speak, on those lots 12, 14, 15, and 16, though the grade, I understand. Okay. Okay, because the other lots have some setback there to help them with that blowing sand. And I'm concerned that these other lots have nothing at all. And I don't know if it was a matter they just didn't want to buy that land from Fox, or there was some other reason.
I don't know for sure, but that lot line has been established there for many years. I think it even predates the Arts Foundation ownership. That's been an established lot line for many years.
Okay.
So I can only assume that that was part of it. But yeah, the question on the blow sand is a good one as to, it depends on, I guess, how that sand's coming in. If the sand's coming off that existing dune, then there's a potential for greater exposure for those lots. But if the sand's coming over the mountain, you could probably argue that that these other lots have a greater potential for the sand settling in those areas, because they'll have this tall wall and it'll drop down into that pocket between the house and the wall. But yeah, the bottom line is this whole area, not just this property, but this whole area has seen a history of blow sand.
You know, and looking at this lot 17 through 25, is that tall wall going to be in their backyard or on the top of that green buffer zone?
It's in the backyard.
In their
It'll
backyard.
tier up, and then this is almost a 3-to-1 bench up here.
Okay.
And then there's a gutter system that runs across the top here to help with, as stormwater comes off the hillside, it'll be collected in this gutter system that'll then properly
Then go
convey
where?
Into the retention system.
Underneath everything to the very front of the property? Under all those homes into the front of the property?
I'd have to defer to Public Works on that one. I'm not
Because
sure
I would
exactly.
imagine, all that's going to go down to lot 14.
There is, I think, if I remember correctly, there's a small retention area here, and then there's the larger one up front.
Okay. So again, any
May run it down the street.
well, yeah, anything coming in from the top, I mean, any of the water flow from the top would, it's hard to see.
Yeah, there's a
Understand where the
conveyance
water flow's
system
coming
that will properly collect that
Yeah,
coming
oh,
off.
there we go, yeah, okay, down the street.
So Les,
Okay, that's all I have for questions.
I was next.
Oh, go ahead, yeah, so, okay, you're asking.
No, I'm not going to ask that one, you can ask that one. A couple things. Let me first say that I'm delighted to see that this project is before us, that something is about to happen there, and I'm not opposed to that. But it does present a lot of problems, and they more and more have come to light. And I'm just, one of the questions I wanted to ask, I don't know if anybody here, maybe the city attorney might have the answer, but is that blow sand, is that a real estate disclosure item? Well, maybe he can.
I'm trying to think back to the CAR form. I'm thinking of the forms right now. If there is some potential for a nuisance, I suppose it could be a disclosure, but I don't think there is any legal requirement for it to be disclosed.
Okay, well, I'm just, as we were talking, that just kind of surfaced. And then I also wanted to comment on Les's comment that because this was similar to what was approved before, that you didn't take up certain considerations. But what was approved before had a gate entrance that was monumental, if you remember.
Yeah.
And, everything was going to be in behind that gate and across the front, and it was a much more expensive product, which we just discussed that as why they didn't anticipate having the demographics, having as many children in there. Whereas I'm seeing this more for a younger group with children. So I do see that there's a reason to discuss what kind of amenities we should have on there, or would desire to have on there. And so I'm just, and Lee's point on parking, I mean, I sure as heck wouldn't want my family to come home around Christmas time. I don't know where they'd all park if everybody's family was doing the same thing. So, and that's, I guess, always a problem in a gated community, but they're just not leaving any room at all.
There's no
for-
alternative.
Yeah,
It's too
there's
tight.
no alternative here at all. So
It's too tight.
I'm anxious to have the opportunity to speak with the developer. And
So just my question, I haven't, this is the first I've seen this because I was excluded from the laying under the old FTPC rules because it was within the
Yeah.
common area 500, so I don't remember that grandiose. The question is on a visual with the wall. So is the green that's at the top of the screen, like under the word plan, are those homes seeing this massive wall in their backyard and then going up the slope they're seeing this greenery? Or
Well, depending on the height of the tiered wall system, they will likely see some of this 3-to-1 slope landscaping on the top.
it'll be like above them?
Correct. You'd have the tiered wall system, and then above that, in this area, you're gonna have the 3-to-1 slope and plantings up there. So it's certainly if you're 18-plus feet in height of, in that case, you'd have to have 3 tiered walls set up. It's gonna be quite a ways up there, so you're gonna see it at an angle, some of it, but as you get further back into the project and beyond is where you're really gonna take into all of this planting up here.
But the wall is the black line of the houses. Right? And then
Yes,
the
this-
greenery is beyond the wall.
Correct. This exhibit doesn't take into account the 3-tiered wall, though this was done with the original submittal. So there'd be a slight further setback of the wall system, but it's up higher. It's up on the the upper part
Of the slope.
of that slope that exists there now. So they'll tier in the wall system to get down to the homes, and then this upper area that's left is going to be planted with desertscape plantings that'll help with the overall aesthetic. But it's not at the same level of the homes. It's quite a bit higher than the homes. And again, that height is going to depend on this slope and the top of this slope and how it relates to the homes. So it's going to vary from a few feet as you get further down to the south end to up into the upper teens, 20 feet, as you get towards the upper third of the project in this general area.
Okay. And then beyond that is the sand that then heads up the hillside.
Sand and rock.
Right.
So, yeah, the rock cropping kind of comes in closer down into here, if you will. So the dune is more in here. And so the rock cropping comes into this area. I think this might actually be part of the edge of it, if I remember
Right.
correctly.
Yeah, they'll never escape the sand. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Okay. Christine?
Okay, Les, this drainage ditch, that's at the very west part, behind the Great Wall of La Quinta. What's to keep the sand out of that? I'm concerned about the hydrology here. If we have,
It
Flash
will
flooding?
It will require, they'll definitely have to be maintaining that, yes.
okay, and that will be part of their homeowners association, I mean, their homeowners or?
It would be the responsibility of the the community to have to maintain that going forward, yes.
Okay. So, is there some genuine concern about like a flash flooding or heavy rain or anything? Because with that comes things other than water, rocks, stumps, all kinds of things. So are you satisfied with what they've done
Well,
to
they
mitigate that?
might have to defer to Public Works. There was a review of the hydrology and taking that into consideration. I believe the design is for a 100-year event, so I don't know if you want to add any more, Ed?
No,
but
that's good enough for now. Okay, and then if you look at lot 64 and 65, all right, lot 65 is getting ready to back out of his garage. Does he have room to back out and then go forward? Because I can't really tell from here, because we don't want this person backing out onto the street. I mean, even it would be Calle de Nostalgia, but still in all.
Shared driveway looked like 24 feet.
Do we know what the, yeah. And then it sort of stops, and I don't know, I can't tell from this if there's room for this person to actually back out and then go forward.
The common driveway width is 26 feet.
Okay. All right, so then lengthwise, is it going east far enough? Is it going east far enough for 65 to get out of his garage and turn around and go forward? The road itself?
I just heard the applicant say 32. I'm going by the exhibit of the specific plan, which is
Okay, well,
a little bit different,
I can ask him that question.
But
Okay.
it is designed to have enough sufficient width for a standard vehicle to be able to back out
Well, and go forward.
and to be able to make that proper movement to pull out of the garage and then
Okay.
be able to go in the right direction out,
Okay.
exiting out.
All right, thank you, that's it.
One last question. Is the city responsible to make sure that Mr. Fox's property is not landlocked?
No, in this instance, there are a lot of properties that you get further to the west, up into the hillside, that do not have direct access to roads or easements providing that direct access. In this instance, there's no obligation of this property to have to provide a means of access to the property to the west. So the title did not identify any obligation or responsibility for this property to make that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the city is not going to be liable for a situation like this in the future.
As it relates to this situation, this property, there is no, again, obligation for this piece to have to provide a means of easement or other means of access to that property.
Well, it's
to the west.
non-buildable in that, we understand that, but
Right.
still, by law, you don't landlock people, their property. So,
So just one quick question, if you don't mind. Going on what the mayor said, you say that Fox's property is in a conservation area?
Yes.
Define that a little bit more
Well,
for me.
it's within the Coachella Valley Conservation Commission's conservation area boundary that was established with the
Okay.
multi-species habitat conservation plan.
Okay.
So that boundary
Yeah, yeah.
is right there.
So you probably have more control over it than the rest of us.
We just approved a monitoring agreement for that area in the
Yeah.
CDCC.
Okay, all right.
Okay, unless there's any other questions, I'll open up the public hearing, and we do have a request to speak, and the developer from my old hometown, Westlake Village. Hey, give us your name and address for the record.
Mayor, council members, my name is Whit Hollis. I am, our address is Townsgate Drive in Westlake Village. I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak and have the project come before your council. In the last year or so that we've been actively working with your staff, we've found it to be a very pleasant experience, and as you well know, that may not be shared with other jurisdictions. So it's been, staff's been very professional and very, very helpful in working through this. Let me give you a little bit of background. We purchased the note when Lang blew up, if you will. So we came through bankruptcy and foreclosure. We had legal rights not to accept some of the side agreements that were entered into by Lang, but we agreed to honor all those agreements and have worked with our neighbors both to the north and the south, and believe they are in support of this project. The project has an existing tentative map. It has a valid specific plan. We have improvement plans that are in third plan check. We could commence grading upon the issuance of those those improvement plans without any action by your council tonight. We looked at what we need to do to make the project go, given what's happened with the market turn. The comments have been made about the architecture. Robert Heide and Lang Luxury designed very, very, very nice stuff. That product would not sell, in our opinion, in today's market. We have still retained a very, very good architecture firm and tried to modify the production. Your square footages has slightly changed. We've opened up the livability as we see on the first floors. We've taken out the second floor, the guest suites that were in some of the hacienda units. We've actually reduced the floor footprint of the smaller lot bungalow, Every bungalow unit has the ability to have a pool in it, whether it's a spa or a plunge pool. They are on the plans. The haciendas are 10,000 square foot lots or larger, so there's a large amount or much more space there. The specific plan allows for much larger units and much smaller setbacks. The comment was made about Laguna de la Plaza, concerns about views, houses creeping up to the edge of the property. We have designed product that is further away from their property line and still is more than consistent with the existing specific plan. Comments been made about the height of the wall, which it's really a height of, as Les said, about 18 feet along 3 or 4 of the lots. That 19 feet compares to top of the roof of those houses of being in excess of 25. So the backyard owners will see that wall, yes. Another point, when your council approved this project in 2007, there was a condition about the tiering of the walls. The improvement plans that were issued by the city subsequent to that had a vertical wall. We never have asked or never had an answer as to what happened in between then and now. We inherited plans thinking it was a vertical wall. We agree with the tiered setback that staff's recommending because it's more aesthetic. It actually is less expensive to build. It'll be easier to maintain. There have been comments about the hydrology. There is a V ditch along the backside. The hydrology has all been extensively studied. The property withstood a 200-year flood event, 100-year flood event last summer. Minor runoff on the existing slope that's sitting there unprotected, so the wall will only make that better. Yes, the HOA will have to maintain and have maintenance on cleaning up the V-ditch to make sure the hydrology all runs. DRC, the Department of Real Estate, will be required to make sure that the HOA budget and its reserve calculates those numbers. We'll go through all that process. Your counsel has mentioned about the notice of blow sand. We are in the position of being a developer where we have the maintenance or liability responsibility on the tag. We err on the caution of over disclosure as opposed to what's the minimum legal requirement. So we will, of course, mention the possibility of sand, but we tend to think what we've seen on the property sitting in its existing state, it's going to be minimal. And with the vegetation that you have discussed that's on top of the slope, it will actually be better than it is now. Other notes. Street widths, my quick looks are 35 or 39 feet. We did not modify any of the plans that were previously approved. We believe there's more than adequate parking for the site. There's been comments about recreational facilities for children. We're open to that. That's fine. I mean, we can have the modification to the specific plan or a condition added to the language that would require that to be put together, and it would be designed when we come back for the approval of the final landscape plan. That's not a problem. We think the product in the neighborhood or the community will be a very, very good benefit to your community. We worked very, very hard to make sure that it represents what we believe the market would want. The traffic is a significant burden on this project. We're building a significant improvement on church property with their agreement that they will have permanent use of. The city has within the last few months, mentioned closing off the frontage on Washington, which requires additional responsibility or expenses on the project, including the full traffic. I mean, the traffic signal has been there from day one. We've walked into this project realizing what we have to do. With your approval, we'd like to move forward as soon as we can. I can answer any other questions you like.
Okay. Questions of the applicant?
It's a plunge pool. We don't have a plunge pool.
It would probably be no longer than, say, 12 to 15 feet in length, something like that.
How wide?
I'm sorry?
Width?
It could be 10 feet.
Get wet, not volleyball players.
You see a plunge pool in, if you've seen the small lot projects that are cropped up in Palm Springs that are being built, 3,000 square foot lots, where they have a small backyard, they have a jacuzzi spa, and then they have a 10, 15 foot long pool, no deeper than 5 feet, something like that.
I think your floor plan showed areas where pools and spas could be put in.
Yes, sir.
So there will be areas set aside for the property owner to go ahead and do this.
Yes, sir. We actually need to make a decision when we get into the marketing whether or not we will deliver pools as part of the product, offer them as options or
Could be
whatever, but we have to make that
An
decision.
alternate to add to, and you could put it in when you're building.
We certainly will offer it as an option. We may end up deciding that the market requires it to be put in as part of the deal, and you give, there are projects in your city that give a credit for a designer for a pool, and you have choices of which pool you wish.
What do you anticipate the price range of these units to be?
7s to barely over $1 million.
Okay.
Wow. Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank the gentleman for coming up and tell him that you've satisfied all my concerns. And I'll be looking forward to the recreation area as it comes back through the process. And thank you very much for your cooperation on all of the pile on of additions that you've got.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Linda? Just one last thing, and you might want to address the entrance, the main entrance going in there. With a project like this, you want a nice entrance, not some stoic type of entrance in that. So look at it because I'll be interested to see how you handle that. Because I think with a project like this and what you're trying to develop, and I love the floor plans in that because I think it shows a lot of creativity in regards to livability, especially indoor-outdoor type of living. And I think that's one of the things we address here in the Coachella Valley.
I will, sir. Thank you.
Lee?
Yeah, and one of the things I did like as well, you had the drawing of the street view of your development, and I like how that looks. It's not going, it's not too high above the road, so the view from the road looks real well, and so it's not too high. The question was asked, though, regarding that shared driveway.
Yes, sir.
I mean, from the bottom of the curb to the bottom of the curve is only 24 feet based on the exhibit in here. Can someone back out onto that shared driveway and turn around to go out forward within a 24-foot driveway?
Yes, sir. When the product, the architecture is being developed, we have to make absolutely sure that the turning radiuses out of the garages are met. We can't, we obviously don't want to design something that someone's going to have a major problem. We're going to have, if nothing else, is liability issues down the way. I direct your attention to the preliminary plotting plan. I don't know if Les can pull it together, but I'm looking at, the comment was made about lots 64 and 63, and that driveway that they share with 66 and 65, I see it as a width of 32 feet narrowing down to 25 as it comes up to the main interior street. So I believe it's wide with a purpose for those cars coming in and out of the garages. Now, granted, yes, this is a dense product that that was approved by the city, within the specific plan calls for this type of product. As I mentioned before, we've actually lessened the footprints of the product to back up some of this. So I think there will not be problems with occupants either going in or coming out of their garages.
Given they don't have a big truck like they used to have.
Yes, if they want to park the RV, that may not work.
No. Yeah, my big 3/4 ton would have had a problem. Oh, okay. Thank you.
But I think, Lee, that somewhere along the line, he said the magic words, that they're not going to build a product that they can't sell.
Well, I hope not.
That's right.
People became much more sensitive to the market given 2008 and 2009. Yes.
Anything else of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and the matters before the council.
Question, if I could, Mr. Mayor, the memorandum that was handed out here, the clarification of condition approval of number 3A for specific plan. So this is just a clarification of the language that's already in there. We do not need to add anything.
We would ask that this language be incorporated to replace condition 3A relevant to the specific plan and condition 55 relevant to the site development permit.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I just want to clarify this item right here.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, let's give it a shot here. With that, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2014. Who has the magic number?
039.
Thank you. 039, a resolution of the City Council of the City of La Quinta, California, approving specific plan 2006-081, amendment number 1 for the Canyon Ridge project, case number specific plan 2006-081, amendment number 1, applicant West Coast Housing Partners. And is this where I would recognize the recreation area that we talked about? And also with the amended language for 3A and approval of number 55?
Just 3A would be applicable.
Just 3A? Okay. Thank you.
Second.
Moved and second. Please vote. Motion passes. That concludes our public
No,
hearing.
there's a second. There's a
Oh,
second.
excuse me. Oh,
Yeah. Do you want to?
Sure, well, move approval to adopt a resolution approving site development permit 2013-937, subject to certain findings and conditions of approval.
Second.
moved and second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. Thank you for being here, and I'll ask for an adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Moved and second, please vote. Motion passes. We're adjourned. Thank you.